Hello and welcome to interest.co.nz. I'm Gareth Vaughan with another of our double shot interviews, and I'm joined today by Michele Levine, who's the CEO of Roy Morgan Research. Thanks for joining us, Michele.
Pleasure.
Michelle's here to talk to us about Roy Morgan's annual Customer Satisfaction Awards. Now, it's the first time you've done this in New Zealand.
Yep.
What has driven you to do this in New Zealand now?
Well, we've been measuring customer satisfaction for many years in both New Zealand and Australia, and working with our clients who need to understand how satisfied their customers are, etc. So customer satisfaction is always important. And of course, in tough times, tough economic times like you're having here in New Zealand, the most important thing to do is to understand your customers, what they need, and give them that. So what we see in tough times, though, is many companies will actually start cutting costs. They'll start thinking they need to up the quality of their products, and really what they need to do is to understand what their customers want and therefore how to satisfy them. So now's a really good time to be thinking about customer satisfaction. But in terms of the awards, we really hadn't thought about celebrating the winners. We'd been measuring it and helping people do it better, but we then thought, well, why not have an award? Why not focus the mind on the winners in each of these categories? And so we just looked at our data and we went through and looked at who had topped the list in their category each month over the last 12 months of 2011, and then picked out the winners for the whole of 2011.
So what categories or industries have you looked at?
There's about 24, and they range from things like, coffee shop of the year through to airline of the year, domestic and international. There's banking categories, there's clothing stores, there's all of the telcos, supermarkets, a whole range of different categories.
And how do you judge customer satisfaction?
Well, we don't really judge it, the customers do. That's what's interesting about this. This is based on a survey, so it's a survey of about 12,000 New Zealanders across the whole of New Zealand. We find out from those people which companies they deal with, which coffee shops they've been to, which banks they bank with. So we then identify a really good cross-section of customers of each of these operations, and we ask the customers how satisfied they are with that bank or that coffee company or that telecommunications company. And we ask them on a 5-point scale, very satisfied, fairly satisfied, not very satisfied, etc. And we look at the percentage that are very or fairly satisfied. And the one that gets the highest percentage is the winner. So, we think that this is really about the customers saying how satisfied they are.
And you've go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it's very different. It's quite unique, strangely enough, because many awards are given by, a group of boffins in a laboratory deciding that this is the better product, or by maybe a particular magazine's readers deciding this is the product. But we actually think when it comes to customer satisfaction, the best thing to do is to ask the customers.
Yep. And you've also looked at the which industries are more popular than others, or which industries have more satisfied customers than others. Can you tell us in terms of that, which industries came out on top and which ones came out on the bottom of that?
Yes. The Roy Morgan customer satisfaction measures are the same across all of the different industries. So that does allow us to look across the industries and seriously understand what people are satisfied with and not satisfied with. So there's perhaps no real surprises if you think about it. People are really satisfied with their car. So automotive is pretty high, and we have something like an average of 91% of people are very or fairly satisfied with their car. And I say that's not surprising because you choose your car, you live with your car, you get used to your car. It generally is considered a she, and she might have these problems, but it's your car. So there's fairly high levels of satisfaction. People are satisfied with clothing stores, and they're satisfied with pharmacies, for instance. They're much less satisfied with things like their gas or their electricity, and a bit more critical of things like telecommunications issues. Now, what does that mean? I think, people, it's about what they're expecting and what joy they get from the product or the service. And, if you go in and you buy something at a clothing store, you walk out with something that you've chosen. You probably feel you're predisposed to feel fairly satisfied, unless you then have a problem with it. On the other hand, it's really hard to get excited about your electricity. I know there's a lot of people who work for electricity companies and that's their life, but at the end of the day, as a consumer, your electricity's there. The only time you think about it is if something goes wrong. So there's not going to be really strong positive levels of satisfaction with basic things like electricity and gas. And with the telecommunications space, I think what we're seeing is there's a lot of change going on in that industry. There's a lot more products on offer. There's an enormous amount of complexity for customers. There's a lot of complexity to work through what features, what services, what are the plans that they're on. So there's those things, so that in a way customers are thinking more deeply about it, and they're bound to be thinking, well, it's not quite what I thought, it's not as easy or whatever. And then we've also got this telecommunications industry is really pushing the boundaries. I mean, mobile telephony all over New Zealand. There's some places it's bound to be not working quite so well as others. So I think generally the customer satisfaction equation is about customer expectations and how well they're met. And in some of these areas, it's probably just a bit harder to meet customer expectations.
And on to the actual winners. Firstly, can you tell us about the banking and finance sector? Who were your winners there?
Well, in the banking and finance sector, we look at two areas. We actually look at what we call major banks, and those are the banks that have more than 7.5% market share as a main financial institution. And the winner there was the Kiwi Group, Kiwi Bank. And that may be surprising to some, not really to us. The Kiwi Bank have consistently satisfied their customers over quite a long period. So they were the standout winner, in fact winning 12 months out of 12. So no questions there. When it comes to the overall financial institution, any financial institution, regardless of how big they are, it was the SBS Bank. So they topped the list there, again with very, very strong customer satisfaction.
And how did they go across the 12 months?
Well, they won 8 out of 12. So this is a more contested area. More contested, simply more players, and with smaller players, you're likely to have a little bit more changing going on in that customer satisfaction. You know, they're very close. The numbers are very close. These are relatively high levels of satisfaction.
And in terms of some of the other sectors, who were some of the standout winners, or some of the industries perhaps where you were surprised?
That's interesting. When it comes to consumers, I'm never surprised. I just ask them and count and tabulate and go, that's interesting. So I sort of don't have a preconceived view. Suzuki is the winner of the Car Manufacturer of the Year. Will probably surprise some people. It's not the biggest market share or any of those things. It's not the most luxurious car. But Suzuki is the winner of the Car Manufacturer of the Year. And so what that means is that people who've chosen to buy a Suzuki and are driving a Suzuki are very satisfied. Toyota does well, but Toyota's perhaps the brand that you would expect to be up there. But when it comes to asking customers, it's Suzuki that actually took the prize. Subway wins the Quick Service Restaurant of the Year, and that was a real standout performance, 12 out of 12. And again, what Subway have obviously done is understood what their customers want, and they're giving it to them, and their customers are satisfied. So, it's not the most upmarket brand that wins. It's not always the one with the most service that wins. It's not always the cheapest. It's the brand or the company that really understands its customers, and of course the customers choose it. You're only dealing with people who walk in the door and buy something, but you've actually satisfied them. They've walked away with their product or service, and they're more satisfied with that than they would be anywhere else.
And in terms of the winners of these awards, how can they actually use them?
Look, the winners are, first of all, they get enormous amount of joy. They just love the fact that their customers are important to them and all of the people that work for their company. So that's first thing, joy, and I think joy is sometimes underrated. But the winners also get a, should have a picture of this, shouldn't I? They have an award that they can use in any of their material. And I think what we'll find that the winners are using the award in their advertising, because it's a real badge of honour. They can in fact say that they've won this award, and they can use that in all of their material. I think the people who didn't win will also be saying, how do we get to win? And that's what we've found in Australia, which we only launched these awards in Australia very recently as well. And we've found everybody saying, well, look, we're trying really hard to satisfy our customers. how do we actually win? How do we get there? How do we do it? So it gives people a bit like a KPI that they can actually start saying, well, this is a real independent measure. How can we improve our customer satisfaction?
Well, thanks for that, Michele. That's Michele Levine, who's the CEO of Roy Morgan Research, and I'm Gareth Vaughan at interest.co.nz.